I've interviewed a lot of candidates for different cybersecurity jobs over the years, and I will tell you today the things that I'm looking for in a candidate, what gets me excited about a candidate, and what is an absolute red flag. All that and more coming up. Hey everybody, thanks for joining. I've had a couple viewers reach out to me and say, hey Jerry, I've done some of the tips you've talked about, I've checked out some of the trainings, I've done some self-development to make my skill set better. Yet when I'm in job interviews, it's very difficult to communicate the value of that training to a potential employer, and ultimately I don't get the job. What would you recommend? So I thought that this video would be very relevant for a lot of folks who are following the channel. Now, real quick, if you're new here, my name's Jerry Ozier. This is Simply Cyber. It's a YouTube channel designed for helping people either get into the cybersecurity field or take their career further faster. Okay, so the meat of this video is all about the interview, but really there's a lot of seeds that you can sow long before the interview that will help you reap a better harvest. Now, let's talk about it. First of all, it's your resume. Obviously, you're going to use your resume to get through the HR process and get the job interview. But anytime there's a job interview, whoever, if it's one person, two people, a panel, multiple levels of interview, whatever it is, the interviewer will be given your resume in preparation for the interview. So, even though it's going to get you through HR, the look of it, the professionalism of it, kind of attributes about it are going to matter because they're going to be setting the kind of impression and expectations of the interviewer before you even walk through the door. Seriously, every time I've ever interviewed someone, I definitely look at their resume right before. And I'll even do things like look at their LinkedIn if it's published, and a couple other things just to see, what can I garner from this individual on what their contributions were when they weren't trying to put on their best face for a job interview. And it's really interesting. So LinkedIn. Now LinkedIn is a free service. It's like a social media thing. You can have a professional photo. You can clean it up. It's essentially like an online resume, although you will have a paper resume that you're submitting through to employers. You really want to take a moment and clean up your LinkedIn. I also recommend that this is probably going to be preclusive of you getting the interview in the first place, but definitely have a professional email. First dot last name. It could be first, initial last name at whatever. You don't want something silly. When you're actually demonstrating on your resume, I don't care if you have a little bit of experience, you're a college grad and or you're about to graduate college and you don't have any professional experience yet, or you're transitioning out of the military, whatever it is. Make sure that the bullets that you're putting have impact. If you have a bullet that says, proficient in Microsoft PowerPoint, okay, that's good. But what is the impact of that? When did you use PowerPoint? Okay, so developed multiple PowerPoints to deliver presentations to over 300 individuals. You see how I just went from making potentially a 2-slide PowerPoint and showing it to my dog versus I am commanding a room of people. I've presented. I know when you're going through a bachelor's degree, for example, you definitely have to give presentations to groups of people. So use impact statements, use qualifiers, use quantifiers if you have that. What is the number? If you have worked somewhere, even in non-cyber role, and you had some responsibility over some project that had some value, what is it? So if you're a project manager, for example, you're a software engineer and you're working on a software engineering project that has an average revenue of $1.2 billion. I mean, that's impressive. And I'd want to know that someone has trusted you to be a team member of a very expensive, very lucrative piece of software. That's important. So having said that, those are different things. Now, if you don't have a professional experience, but you're going to be coming from kind of a technology background, put your GitHub repository on there or get one and put it on there. Be engaged in Twitter and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things you can do to clean up your resume and make it effective, because before you walk in the room and before you speak, that resume is speaking for you. I can't emphasize this enough. Now, another thing, as far as finding a job, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I did a video right there at the beginning of this show, 5 things to do in 2020. There's a lot of tips in there on how to get the cybersecurity job, but because of this video, I do want to emphasize it for a second. find a job through LinkedIn, find a job through networking. The real point that I want to emphasize with this little segment is that if you find a job that you like and you are marginally qualified for, apply for it. Two things. One, we're not expecting that you're going to check all the boxes of what the job is. If it did, that's probably going to be a lateral move for you. And there's reasons to make lateral moves in the industry, but in reality, we're looking for people who are looking for that next step, looking for that next level, trying to challenge themselves. So it's kind of expected that you wouldn't check all the boxes. I know certain people in the industry, or not even in cyber, just in professional life, who feel unqualified to apply for a job that doesn't fully check every box that they can meet, and that's really not the deal. And I want to emphasize that cybersecurity is so strapped for talent and for skill that, even if you don't check all the boxes, and we can get into this in the interview segment, having those applicants in there and letting us decide whether or not you're a good fit, give it a chance. So don't be shy about applying. Now, I will emphasize one important thing, and I really, this is a red flag for me, and I know it's for others too. Do not lie on your resume. Do not lie on your resume. You embellish, I guess, if you want to kind of oversell something you've done, that's fine. You'll have to justify it in the interview, but do not say you did something you didn't do. I was in an interview one time interviewing a candidate, and they say that they wrote regularly for dark reading. Now, dark reading is like an online information security kind of news repository, and it's well respected. So that wasn't on this candidate's resume, and it really surprised me. I said, wow, that's impressive. Had my laptop in front of me, pulled up dark reading, did a search in such a way to see if this individual was an author, regular, whatever, and wasn't. And I stopped the interview and I said, "You just told me this. I can't find you. Why can't I find you? Tell me the last one you wrote so I can pull up that title. I want to see what your writing style is like. This is very impressive." And the candidate then backpedaled and said, "Well, I've written some comments on some posts that were there." And I was like, okay, so, you basically just flat out lied. That's really not a skill or a trait that I want on my team. So it just don't lie. It's not a best practice. It's not going to work at all. Okay, so now let's talk about the interview, right? You've done everything that you're supposed to do at this point. Sweet resume, found a job you like, applied, got the call, got through HR. You're going to go in for the interview. Couple right off the bat, okay? Dress professionally. I feel like this goes without saying. Basically, get an idea of what professional is for that organization and kind of dress one level above it. I'm telling you, it demonstrates a level of professionalism. It demonstrates a level of respect. And it's just a best practice. If you come into an interview dressed like a slob, it's just not going to present well. Another thing that bothers a lot of people that you may not know is timing. Now, let's just say that your interview is at 9 a.m. Do not arrive after 9 a.m. That's totally awful. Do not arrive, and this one is the one that I want to emphasize. If you're going to arrive early, that's great. Do not arrive earlier than 15 minutes. I would recommend 10 minutes as like an ideal because you can kind of get settled. You should be in the parking lot or something before that, obviously, but be ready to walk in 10 minutes prior to the interview. I have had candidates that show up an hour early for the interview, and it's incredibly distracting because in some of the places I've worked, it's not like we have a lobby or an area that's appropriate for a non-employee to be sitting around. So what ends up happening is I have to either hustle and move people around, or I stick them in a conference room. But the problem is the conference room that we're going to use for the interview is actually booked right up until their interview, so I can't stick them there. So it actually introduces stress to the interviewer and the handlers for you. So if it's a large company and you're going to sit in a lobby, I guess that's fine. But really, a best practice would be 10 minutes, aim for that, getting there. And, the people who are interviewing you are expecting really you to be there a few minutes earlier than your interview because you want to get set up, handshakes, would you like some water? Here's my resumes, etc. Let's get down to business. Now, let's talk about answering questions because this is really it. There was a study done, and I've been looking forward to link it in the show notes below, and I haven't found it yet, but just trust me on this one. Many people form first impressions, and it has a lasting impact. A lot of individuals, despite the appropriateness or not, make a strong opinion within the first 20 seconds of meeting someone whether or not they're going to be a good fit for the role. Now, obviously, you have to go through all the questions. You could think this person's a great person, but they're not qualified or they're not going to work in the role, and that's fine. But what I want to tell you is there's kind of a spectrum here. Anxiety on one side and confidence on the other. The more confident you are, the more engaging you are, the more you're going to present well and be appealing, for lack of a better term, to the panel that is interviewing you. We are looking to fill this role. We're looking to put someone in this job. Are you the one? Oh, you're confident in your answers. You are engaging. You're interesting. Yes, this is good. We're having a back and forth. You can think. That's good because you can't. There's not a playbook for every situation in cyber. It's just not that way. You gotta be kind of agile and be able to pivot and stuff like that. So that's good. Now the other end of the spectrum, anxious and boring, the opposite of engaging. You're giving really poor answers. You're just yes or no. You're not elaborating. You're clearly kind of all over the place, rambling. That's just not going to work either. Now, again, depending on the candidates that you're competing against, maybe you do get the job. But what I'm trying to present in this video is tips and tricks that are going to give you that higher level of success percentage on getting the job. So I'm not saying that if you're an introvert and you're naturally anxious, that's fine. Just take some breaths before you go in, be ready. Like you are being interviewed because you are qualified and the interview team wants you to come in as a potential candidate for the job. So take that in your mind. You're not there by accident. You earned the right to be there. So you should be confident. Now, another thing that I'll say, and I have a good friend who's a master of this. I interviewed him before we were friends. I interviewed him for a job and then we worked together. If you don't know the answer to a question, that is absolutely fine. That is fine. We understand nobody in cybersecurity knows everything, okay? But if you're asked a question, A, don't make up something. B, don't ramble about something that's completely unrelated. C, really, think about the question for a moment. We're not in a hurry there. We're there to, have a conversation. Think about the answer. Now, if you are absolutely have no idea what we're talking about, right? Okay, so say you get a question like, this is for a security operation analyst 1 position, and they ask you a question that might be a borderline unfair, and they say, how would you go about threat hunting? Now, threat hunting is a little bit more of an advanced security operations analyst skill set, and maybe they're just probing to see what your answer would be. But if you don't know the answer to that question, don't just fill the space. You can say honestly, I haven't had any experience doing threat hunting. Perhaps you've heard of it. I've heard of threat hunting. I've read some threat reports, or I know about threat intelligence reports that I've read, but I'm not really sure about threat hunting. Be honest, be sincere, be yourself. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the questions that I actually got from a few viewers around, I downloaded Metasploitable, I downloaded Kali Linux, I played with it, I exploited the box, I did what I was supposed to do. I watched some YouTube videos. I've been subscribing to different Twitter feeds, Twitter lists, and staying abreast of developing situations with ransomware or the new APT threats, or I've been reading DHS reports, whatever it is. You've been going to conferences. All great stuff. But how do you translate that into an interview? Now, what I want to say, and this is probably the golden nugget out of this entire video, is you need to weave this information into your answers. You don't just need to blurt out, I've done Metasploit, I've played with Metasploit. What you need to say is, going back to that kind of threat hunting thing, what do you know about threat hunting? You could say, okay, so you don't know what threat hunting is, but you've been to a conference where someone was talking about blue team and red teaming, or the keynote speaker at B-Sides this last year, she spoke about purple teaming. So what you need to say is, you don't know the answer to threat hunting. Okay, so what is threat hunting? Well, I don't have any experience threat hunting. I've heard the term thrown around. When I was at B-Sides Charleston, the keynote speaker was talking about purple teaming and really around how blue and red can help each other, understand how threats can present themselves in a system network, and how attacking from the red team's perspective can inform the blue team on where to look. for those indicators of compromise. Now, you've just kind of spoke around threat hunting, I mean, at a very high level, but what you've just done is tell me a couple things. One, you're proactive and you have gone to conferences to seek information. Two, you attended a talk at that conference and actually retained something valuable that you can use forward in your career. And three, it was relevant, right? So you don't know what threat hunting is, but you did hear this keynote speaker speaking about threats and kind of the blue team, red team, which is where, blue team does the threat hunting. But do you see what I'm saying? If you have done, say, how would you detect an attack on a network service? You may not know the answer to that question, right? But you could say, hey, when I was downloaded Kali Linux and the Metasploitable CD from Rapid7, which I think that's where Metasploitable comes from. But so I downloaded Metasploitable and I downloaded Kali Linux, and I actually attacked Metasploitable, and I was attacking the FTP service, and I was attacking the SMB service or the SMB protocol. And when I was doing that from the Metasploitable CD side, or from the host terminal of the Metasploitable CD, I didn't see any attacks. It was really interesting how you could kind of own the box and get root access on it without anything visual going on the front end. And maybe you get more proactive and you actually put something in place that allows you to kind of like watch logs or some type of agent on the Metasploitable box, so then you could see it when an attack is successful, that it pops, right? So again, what you've just done is told me that you are proactive, you have sought out using this tool, you understand what the tool is. You didn't just download it and then say you had it. You actually stepped through some tutorials, demonstrated that skill. That's really what we're looking for. Have you the passion? Have you the interest? Are you proactive? Can you take control? Because in cybersecurity, you're not just going to be handed a recipe or a playbook and be told go. Even at the lowest levels of entry-level positions, there are playbooks and SOPs, but for the most part, you do have to think independently and go seek out new knowledge. And that's what I want to see. That's what a lot of interviewers want to see. Do you have kind of the mental skill set to understand that you need to go find something, and then how to find it? I'm telling you, this is definitely one of the most important things you can do. Whatever you're doing to improve yourself from a cybersecurity skill perspective, take that information and weave it into your answers. It will not be kind of bragging. It will not be awkward, forced. I have left many interviews with my peers and made a comment like, oh, that's interesting. I remember just one. We just hired an individual not too long ago who actually presented at DerbyCon on hacking Kubernetes Docker containers. And I remember saying like, wow, this, as we were talking, what'd you think of the candidate or such and such? I said, yeah, impressive, this thing. And by the way, they presented at DerbyCon. To me, that's a really well-respected conference. A, they go to the respected conference. B, they were qualified to present at it. And C, they chose a really interesting topic. Like, this is cool. This is an interesting, complicated, dynamic individual. Like, I want to know more about this person. So, having said all that, this is really cool. I'm kind of curious in the comments below, what kind of tips or tricks do you have for crushing an interview? I'd love to hear them and really share it with the community at large. So that's going to do it for this week. I hope these tips can help you. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'd love to engage the community, and I really want to help everyone take their career further, faster. Thanks, and until next time, stay secure.